Hey guys! Psycrafter here. Today I am back for another episode of Anime vs. Reality. We're in the second last part that I'm going to be doing for the Spice and Wolf reboot, which it's mostly been a repeat so far. In the last part it's going to be different though. But I want to get a start on this right now. So let's grab an apple and take a bite. I still love how I still am doing this bit. Every episode. Apples. So we are now currently in episode 16 during what I call the Fermi arc, but it's known as the Kumerson arc. And arriving at the trading house, Kraft finds Fermi waiting with a contract and a knife. An interesting combination. I thought it would be a contract and a pen that you would use, but announcing that he wants to repay Hollow's debt and marry her with everyone watching. It's like, okay, you're simping a bit too hard, buddy. Oh yeah, that's right. The nickname I did give this arc is the Simp arc. Kraft says that Hollow might not quit being his traveling companion, even if her debt is paid off. Fermi has figured out that Hollow isn't associated with any monastic order, meaning she can get married as a traveling nun. Oh shoot. The laws of Kumerson make it that Kraft is Hollow's legal guardian since she's in debt to him. Kraft won't accept a contract without reading it, obviously, so Fermi lets him read it to reveal that the debt Fermi will pay off is apparently 1,020 silver coins, with the deadline for payment being tomorrow evening. He decides to accept the deal, requesting the money in cash, with no negotiations on discounts or installment payments. Yeah, fair. As soon as Fermi leaves, Kraft announces to the crowd that his companion won't be swayed because another man took her debt. The crowd starts taking bets on who will win over Hollow between Fermi and Kraft. It's like, you must be really desperate for entertainment if you're betting on romance. Stepping out of the trading house, Guy Batos joins Kraft outside to say he believes that Fermi has a not so admirable method to gather the funds to fulfill the contract. Kraft asks why Guy Batos is telling him this, and it's because losing a willing traveling companion is a painful thing for a traveling merchant. Back at the inn room, Hollow surprised Kraft accepted the contract, asking what he'll do if Fermi does hand over the 20 silver, and Kraft says he'll take what she's actually she's actually used, like the money she's actually used, and give the rest to her. It's like, split it fair. Hollow doesn't like to be tested, and Kraft finds it annoying to be the only one tested. But if the contract is fulfilled, she's free to do whatever she wants, so I guess that's a win. She believes Kraft is confident, but he actually believes in her, which makes her stop mid-tail brushing and laughing about how he was cuter when he was clumsier. Kraft believes he has grown a fair bit through their journey together, making Hollow question if acting composure makes one an adult. Hollow sees Kraft's composure more as mere cunning because he had a chance to weigh the odds on a favourable gamble. She says it'd just be as admirable to not have accepted Fermi's contract, and that she's in disbelief he didn't consider her feelings concerning it, acting out her response if she was Kraft. It's like, would you take the deal if the deal was money for a girl, basically? Kraft says that doing that would have been the more manly thing to do, but it may not be the most mature thing to do, which Hollow agrees with. Hollow lands on the idea that being a good man and a good adult might be a contradiction, that every good male has a childish side. Asking how Hollow would handle the contract, she said she'd accept with a smile before returning to the inn and kneeling before Kraft in sadness. Hollow knows Kraft will do stuff behind the scenes to ensure the contract is fulfilled, getting ready for the festival so Kraft can use her as bribery. Okay. Kraft and Hollow meet with Mark, who questions if Kraft should be walking around with Hollow, but keeping her in the inn would make it really look like Hollow is shackled by her debt. It's like, yeah, it's a, you do nothing, you lose, you do something, you lose, almost. Mark asks Hollow for her version of the truth, to which she plays up the indebted nun role so hard it makes it look like Kraft is the one shackled. It's like, he really is. He really is. Lent returns to Mark's shop to announce that 200 Liliad has been recorded in the... No. Liliad? Has been recorded in the tax ledgers, which is equivalent to 820 silver. Damn. Liliad is like the best money, apparently. On top of potentially having some secret savings and some money owed to him, Fermi might have enough already, and he might just need to do a little push. Kraft mentions the gambling parlors in town, like, that there are gambling parlors in town, but there's only cards, dice, and rabbit races, all of which have a betting limit. Oh, you missed out on the mark with the turtle one, but it's probably too cold for the turtles. On the topic of gambling, people are betting on what will happen after the contract is fulfilled, because he has another challenge. Winning over Hollow, and Kraft has the advantage with a ratio of 1 to 2. Mark is curious as to what's really going on, but Hollow interrupts him to say to not be curious about it, revealing she learned from Lan about the quality of the flour Mark's selling. That doesn't make Mark happy. Kraft is certain he'll have to keep an eye on Fermi's movements, as well as Fermi might be doing the same to him, but Mark says that Fermi looks down on using strategies like that. Fermi was born the third son of a rich family, but he left the money behind because he didn't want it to be kept inside. Yeah. Being rich does have that sort of drawback. As someone that made their money all on their own, Fermi has become really self-assertive, trusting his own eye for fish, his own mouth for sales, and God. Kraft says he'd used his connections immediately, and that there's no whining about a battle between merchants. Later on in the day, Kraft and Hollow hear a blowing horn, and think it's a shepherd, and Hollow suggests it might be Nora. But she isn't a shepherd anymore. With Kraft being unshaken by the mention of Nora, it makes Hollow look desperate for attention, which makes Kraft delighted. It's like, you're desperate for attention from me. Yay! It turns out that the horn was to indicate the start of the festival, so Kraft and Hollow join the crowd, but with Hollow being too short, Kraft brings her back up to their inn room for a better overhead view. The festival kicks off with musicians playing instruments like the bodhran, which is a frame drum, using a sipin, tipper, the biwa, a Japanese plucked lute, and the fiddle. Wow, only one of those is an actual instrument I know the name of. People wearing animal masks move straw structures as part of the festival, and the structures are of bulls and horses. From the other direction, people in knights' helmets pull straw structures of people, and the two sides clash, only stopped by the third group seemingly representing the gods. They point towards the alcohol, which is wheeled up, poured and flung onto the knights and animals, at which point the crowd joins to celebrate. Wow, okay, this is a better party than most. This is a better party than most I've been to. Festivities get underway with circle dancing, and Craft and Hollow go down to join them to dance and get drunk, although that's mostly Hollow as Craft carries her back to the room in the late afternoon and gets Hollow out of her overclothes. Fun fact though, I'm pretty sure this was that's another detail shown only in the opening of the original second season opening. At least I think so. I probably got that wrong. No, yeah, it is the original season 2 opening. A letter arrives for Craft from Diana, which he plans to hold on to while visiting Mark, but Hollow sniffs it out. You can't get past the wolf. Craft tells Hollow he visited someone that knew a lot about Northern legends and a story he heard about her in Lenos, but she's not sure if that's true. That story even included a clue for where Yoitsu might be located, since it stated which direction she came from. Hollow gets momentarily excited, before realizing that Craft is narrowing down on Yoitsu's location quickly, meaning their journey will be ending soon. Craft notices Hollow's sadness and says it may take half a year to find it while traveling by cart. He goes to leave, but not before Hollow tells him to leave the letter behind, and mocks Hollow for not being able to... he's mocking her for not being able to read. At Mark's shop, Mark is annoyed that Craft was having fun with Hollow while he does all the work, but Mark made a lot of money, so he'll let it slide. Craft thinks Mark has jumped on Fermi's side, but it's more Fermi's method that he's jumped on. And thinking back, Craft realizes it's the pirate. It seems related to the fortune teller, who has already skipped town, and because the Inquisitors have been called, it's like no one expects the Spanish Inquisition. The fortune teller has managed to circulate an unusually high amount of pyrite throughout Kumerson, and Mark thinks the fortune teller bought it in another town and sold it all in Kumerson. Mark asks Craft how much he thinks the pyrite is worth per piece, and Craft says they're usually about 10 Elaid coins, so he tosses it a value of 100, but they're worth 270. Oh my gosh. With the price set to go up tomorrow when the market opens. It's like, you literally just need 2 pieces of pyrite, you get a 1,000 Iliad, which is worth $4,000. It's like, what? What the heck is that? The women of Kumerson are all asking the rich merchants and farmers to buy pyrite for them to compete with each other on how much they buy for. Mark says that the profits are no longer at the level of percent of cost, but at how many times the original cost was. Mark has already made about 300 Iliad through the pyrite market, and mentions that everyone already knew about the pyrite as early as the morning, around when Craft was dancing with Hollow. And the stone merchant shops experienced a huge uproar of purchases. That's what happens when you have fun. You lose out. Mark says that the price will still rise since merchants are still running around buying pyrite, which does give Craft some hope. Craft seizes the opportunity to take Mark's pyrite with the money owed for the nails. Mark mentions that Fermi seems to be making huge profits from the pyrite market and will be able to actually pay the 1,020 silver coins. It's like, oh wow, okay. He asks if Hollow will be alright, and Craft reveals that Hollow is travelling with a location in mind, and that he's going along with her. That he'll raise their travelling funds with the 1,000 silver coins and pyrite. The festival rages on into the night, with a horse straw structure knocking over a human straw structure. God faces being smacked into another human straw structure, and realistic mock fights. But a real fight is about to start in Craft and Hollow's in-room, as Hollow reveals she can read by learning that Yoitsu has been destroyed. It's like, I thought you could read. And Craft tries to comfort Hollow by saying they're old legends, and that a lot of them are false, usually written by kings that took over lands to cover things up. Hollow asks Craft why he hid the truth from her, to which he wanted to find the right time to tell her because it's a sensitive topic. She breaks down, believing Craft enjoyed watching her grow excited for being able to return to Yoitsu while being oblivious to the truth. She correctly guesses that Craft knew for a while and says that Craft loves pathetic and weak little lambs. However, she confuses details of Craft telling her to go back to Nahira alone, thinking Craft has grown tired of her. Hollow cries that she's alone once again, since no one is waiting for her return at Yoitsu or Pazlo. Man, that's been a while since we mentioned that town. Craft tries to comfort Hollow, but she pushes him away and asks what she is to him. Her mentality switches and she asks if Craft will make love to her in a desperate chance to save her species before remembering he's good-natured. It's like, damn it, he's too good-natured to kind of have a kid with him. She also remembers that Fermi loves her and realizes that Craft wasn't flustered because he would get 1,020 silver in exchange for losing her. Again, Craft tries to comfort Hollow, but she runs to the bed, and Craft reads the letter, leaving the inn, and realizing how much he messed up. He done forked it. But let's see if Craft can bring it back by the end of this section, as we go into episode 17. Even with how late it is, the festival rages on with stage fights and straw structures being knocked over in combat. Meanwhile, Craft walks the streets of Kumerson thinking about Hollow saying that Fermi loves her and what she is to him. Craft ends up back at Mark's shop, and talking about his mistake, Mark tells him to admit he let his guard down, which he totally did. Craft wants to know which way the wind is blowing in terms of the day-to-day market as an outsider, but Mark says to give up because it's rare for rising prices to drop. Mark describes that the price board next to the stone merchant shop shows that the number of people wanting to buy keeps growing against sellers. The price of pyrite is not set to drop within a day or two, that only an act of God can change the direction of the wind. Kraft figures he'll have to pretend to be God to beat Fermi at a predictable price drop, but he's unsure on how to do this. Thinking about how to pretend to be God, which is a sentence I never thought I would have to say in terms of religion, Kraft thinks about how Hollow tricked the businessman during the Martin Fur deal, spotted the angled table at the Pepper deal, and manipulated Mr. Romario into doing the gold smuggling, not the drug one. He's so focused that the deer straw structure's head being smashed into the sky doesn't faze him, but his attention is caught by another merchant showing off his pyrite purchase, hearing the price might double tomorrow. On the way back to the inn, Kraft sees Fermi leaving the inn and looking up at Hollow, indicating something happened between them. Returning inside the inn, Kraft remembers a moment of himself and Hollow talking, and goes to return to their inn room when the innkeeper says he has letters for Kraft, both from Hollow. The envelope contains the division of Fermi's assets, evenly split between them, and the second line is a contract of marriage signed by both Fermi and Hollow. Oh no, that's not good. Kraft gets so worked up over this contract that he demands the money he left with the innkeeper and sets out to find Fermi, searching every bar he goes to, not caring about bumping others. By the time he finds Fermi, Kraft acts calm to discuss business with him, wanting Fermi to buy his pyrite, saying he has 520 silver worth of it, according to the current market value. They both know that Fermi is reselling pyrite, so Fermi is curious as to the angle of Kraft selling pyrite to him, asking if Kraft doesn't care about Hollow. But it's because he does that he's doing this. However, Kraft's plan isn't to just sell it to Fermi, but instead sell it on credit and do the sale tomorrow evening at the current market value, while also wanting the money now. It's like, bruh, what is this? Fermi thinks through what Kraft is offering, to which Kraft offers an explanation using an example, but he's confused by the idea until he figures out that Kraft doesn't actually have the pyrite on hand. By buying on credit, it gains value, the person that gains that profit, but selling on credit means you're hoping the value increases. Using that logic, Fermi figures out that Kraft wants the value of pyrite to decrease. Glad to be learning something outside the fish market, because that's what he did in the first place. He was in the fish market. Ugh. Kraft lays it on thick by saying Fermi can gain a proportional profit from the rise of the value of pyrite, but his loss will be massive if it goes down. He announces he's challenging Fermi to a duel. But Fermi explains that this trade would need to be in writing, and he'll probably sell the loan document just to have enough money to fulfill the original contract they made. Even the slightest rise in price would be enough for Fermi to reach the 1,020 silver total, and Fermi doesn't want to accept a deal where he gains from Kraft's loss. Kraft states that Kraft states it does look that way if you focus on the current deal he's making by itself, But he doesn't mind the disadvantage, since Hollow might tear up the marriage contract. Even if Fermi pays off Hollow's debt, he still has the massive risk that Hollow might not say yes to marriage. Fermi reveals that he heard that Kraft and Hollow go into a very severe fight, so Kraft fires back that Hollow has cried in his arms 3 times since they started traveling together, saying she's both cute and stubborn. This angers Fermi into accepting the challenge, changing his mind from being nice with Kraft to wanting to destroy him financially. Okay. At least it's not physically, it's just financially. Leave them broke, leave them dead. Back at Mark's shop again, the two cheers and enjoy their beer, thanks to plentiful harvests happening everywhere. Mark saying they need to praise the gods of harvest. Kraft's there to discuss business, serious business you don't discuss over drinks or, well, you can discuss them over apples. Something that is profitable, but this time it's not a money-making scheme. He asks if the wholesale purchase of wheat is usually focused around the end of the festival, which it is. With that in mind, Kraft wants Mark to spread a rumor using Lamp. The rumor being, I wonder if it's about time for the price of wheat to go up. Mark asks if it's Kraft's plan to make the price of pyrite drop with a rumor, but it's part of it since most people trading the pyrite are traveling merchants looking to sell something and buy something before returning home. And that purchase item is usually wheat. Hopefully the wheat rumor will force a rush purchase of wheat and possibly a massive sell of pyrite. Mark believes Kraft is being a simpleton if he thinks that plan will work, but Kraft plans to buy 1,000 treaty silver of pyrite, not caring about his wallet. As long as he has the 500 treaty silver of pyrite, his wallet won't hurt whether the price goes up or down. Mark figured out that Kraft sold on credit. Mark notes that family could lose a lot of money or go bankrupt, and is glad to see that Kraft took advantage of his ignorance. But Kraft believes family took the challenge knowing the risk, so Mark changes his answer to Kraft's silver tongue trickery. Kraft asks Mark to do one more thing, to buy a massive amount of pyrite, which annoys Mark to find out Kraft didn't find a place to buy the pyrite in the first place before making a contract with Fermi. It's like, dude, you didn't plan this out? What are you doing, man? Kraft explains he didn't have the time, and that he wants to buy it secretly since buying it publicly will make the price rise. Mark says he won't do it, that even though the money sounds good, his reputation would be on the line, that town merchants would rather make a modest living with their shop over a large profit on a side venture. Not only would his reputation be on the line, but that would then reflect poorly on his own family and anyone attached to his stall, basically land. Doing such a thing for Kraft would be highly expensive, and Kraft doesn't have the money to pay for such sociological damage to Mark's signboard. That was a tough bite. Kraft apologized for being so inconsiderate, but Mark understands that Kraft would do anything to keep Hollow around. Mark is confident that Hollow will stay with Kraft until Kraft reveals that he got a marriage contract with her and Fermi's signatures on it. Mark mentions how darkness can always be found one step ahead of someone, and Kraft is still running around because he has a chance. Kraft's next idea is to talk to Gibatos, and Mark thinks it's to meet with Diana again, but Kraft doesn't realize he could trade with Diana until Mark spells it out to him that she controls the northern district of Kumerson. Diana is the person to talk to when dealing with the alchemist, and everyone believes they gather there because of her. Kraft still isn't getting it, so Mark shouts at him that alchemists have pyrite, an untouched source, because reputable businesses don't want to work with alchemists. It's like, bruh, you idiot. Mark apologizes for turning Kraft down, happy that Kraft thought of depending on him. Kraft is fine since Mark gave him some big knowledge, like game changer knowledge if you really think about it. He also gets an idea of a way to help Kraft get a bit of extra pyrite from shops willing to sell their pyrite. Seeing Kraft's face light up makes Mark realize why Hollow would do something so bold, and that merchants should stick to thinking about business. With a new plan in mind, Kraft sets out to find Gibatos in hopes to talk to Diana before the start of the market day. We've still got so much left. Oh my gosh. But we're in episode 18. We're almost halfway. Like, we are sort of halfway. Apples are always so good. I gotta focus up though, because we're in episode 18. And Kraft makes his way to the trading house to find Gibatos, finding him quickly while he's chatting to another merchant friend. In a hidden area, Kraft asks Gibatos about obtaining pyrite from the alchemist, curious if there's any suppliers. Gibatos reminds Kraft of what he said before about helping Kraft, and Kraft remembers it well, along with Diana not liking to talk about business. Kraft mentions that he heard that no business can be done with the alchemist without Diana's permission. Grilling Kraft on why he wants pyrite, Kraft says he doesn't want pyrite for profits or on the rumors that it could show him his fate or heal diseases. Kraft explains he is doing it for profit, but not from the pyrite, but for his cargo, Hollow, not wanting to give up on her. Gibatos sits down, closes his eyes, and goes silent for about half a minute as Kraft watches him, which gains his approval for waiting instead of being desperate. Although I think at one point he was almost about to get desperate. He allows Kraft to go to Diana and ask for help, telling Kraft to say, "I've come to buy a box to store white feathers." Kraft goes to possibly hug Gibatos, but he stops Kraft and tells him to tell him an old tale sometime, asking if he gives off the same air as Diana. Making his way to the northern district, Kraft reaches Diana's home and knocks on her door, asking if anyone's home. Diana answers the door and Kraft apologizes for how late it is, reciting the line Gibatos gave him. Inviting Kraft in, Diana says it's rare for her to get multiple visitors in one day, and Kraft thinks Fermi has visited her, which is not good. Diana figures Kraft got the box for white feathers line from Guy Bartos, and Kraft states he imposed himself on Guy Bartos to be able to see her. Asking what Kraft's business is worth convincing a stubborn man, Kraft says he wants to buy Pirate from her. Diana knows Pirate has been rising in price, and also succinctly figures out that Kraft isn't wanting Pirate for simply profits. Suspicious that you know that immediately. Kraft says he needs it for the jewel, almost saying that it's for jeweling Fermi, but instead answers his cargo. And Diana looks up, almost like someone is listening in. He's realized after considering everything he needs to about his cargo, he can't drop it halfway. Diana takes a moment to talk about her passcode, which is actually more of a way for her to find things that take her interest. The people that give the passcode screen her visitors for her, so she can take a final look. She asks if Kraft already has a Pirate, which he doesn't, but has some merchants he can buy from. Diana is fine with Kraft buying some Pirate from the Alchemist, however someone else has already requested a purchase before him on credit. She'd be fine with selling to Kraft instead, so he'll negotiate with the other party, revealing the amount to be 16,000 Iliad, or 4,020 silver coins of Pyrite, but not the person's name. That is so much Pyrite. Like, you're blowing it out of the water with that. Asking where she can find Kraft tomorrow, Kraft says he'll be in front of the stone merchant stall in the market, able to be found there from as soon as the market opens. Kraft tells Diana he doesn't care about the price, and to tell the other party that as long as the value isn't double the current value, he can buy it at a much higher price. He apologizes again for intruding so late, but Diana explains her life doesn't follow day and night, and wouldn't mind Kraft staying as long as he had interesting stories. Kraft asks Diana one last, somewhat embarrassing question of if there's any stories of pagan gods and humans becoming couples. And Diana says there are many. She starts telling one story but reminds Kraft that he's in a rush, so he asks her to tell him about the stories in detail next time. Kraft returns to Mark's shop to talk about how things went with Diana, and since there was another buyer, Kraft's unsure of what will happen tomorrow. Mark tells Lant to give Kraft the report on the Pirate, of which there's 370 worth available, paid in cash. I don't know, it's silence and pushing out. It's like, he's like, ah! He explains how he thought about why it was only his pocket money to him, and it's because he didn't have the extra money to play with. But what about those people, those with prestigious signboards and lots of money? And that they must have secretly bought a lot. It's like, yes, we can secretly buy all this Pirate and then sell it later for profit. Take from the rich, give to the poor, basically. Since they bought a lot early on, they're finding it hard to sell it, all with how much the price has risen, hesitant to sell it all openly. Kraft figures out that Mark sent Lent out to tell the other town merchants that he's a greedy traveling merchant looking to buy pyrite with cold hard cash. Yeah. Just like, how much do you want? Kraft wants to be happy that Mark did that for him, but clearly he's thinking about that other buyer. And putting that aside, Kraft thanks Mark, and in response Mark hopes Kraft considers him a friend, and not just someone to do his business deals for him. Mark talks about how most traveling merchants face the problem of seeing people as more than business ventures when becoming a town merchant. He then brings up another point. If they're going to part ways forever, would Kraft desperately run around town for him? Mark's interested in Kraft's future since he's running around mad for Hollow, believing Kraft likes Hollow. Which is like the one detail that's almost been consistent this entire time. It almost seems like he does at this point. Mark says that he and Kraft are similar in the way of being affected by the curse of being a traveling merchant, and that Kraft is now interesting because the curse is gone from him. He clocks that Kraft can't tell, asking if it was really that brought Kraft and Hollow to travel together, saying that Kraft reminds him of when he met Adele. Mark starts talking loud enough for other town merchants to hear that poets can't say you can't buy love, and preachers preach there are things more important than money, earning praise from the other town merchants. By working hard to obtain something, you'll want to treasure it, but sometimes the most precious things are easy to obtain. Kraft remembers when Hollow said that brawn is not the only strength of a knight, and Mark gets meta to say Kraft's the main character. It's because he is. Thinking again about what Hollow and himself are to each other, Kraft figures out what his answer to her question is. Mark immediately starts to discuss the value of the information, and the device being more than 10 Lumion gold's worth, and Kraft fires back that if the information is secondhand, it's a terrible deal. It's like, yeah. Kraft fears he would sleep at Mark's stall, but Mark wants Kraft to at least have a bed to sleep in. But Kraft wants to get some experience sleeping rough. Always worth it. Especially if he's going to be bankrupt tomorrow. The next morning, people are asleep on the streets from drunkenness, and Kraft believes he's talking to Hollow before waking up. Kraft says good morning to Lant, and asks if he knows today's plan, but all Lant knows is that they're making a trap for a terrible guy. He tells Lant, whose full name is actually Lant, that he might have to do a difficult job for the plan to work. Based on his name, Kraft figures Lant was born north of Kumerson, which Lant confirms and says his village is always frozen with snow and frost. Kraft says he needs breakfast first and foremost, and Lant knows a stall that sells dry bread, which Kraft is glad for, giving Lant 2 trays silver, 1 for the bread and 1 for his work, with a later payment promised to him. Mark tells Kraft off for spoiling his assistant, but they both do need Lant to be healthy and well fed for today's plan. The crowd is already gathered at the stone merchant's stall, with everyone waiting to buy and not willing to sell. And the average price is 800 Iliad coins, which is 80 times the usual selling price. Iliad asks Mark I'm butchering his name, by the way. I'm sorry. Irulan asks Mark what it will take for Kraft to win, and Mark asks back about the price rise and fall and how it happens, which is essentially a balance of product and buyers. More buyers than product equals rise, and the opposite equals a fall. Mark adds that sales are needed to heat up the market, and those with the pyrite with the advantage are the ones not selling the pyrite. If people sell, others can obtain the pyrite and send the price back up. Kraft isn't aiming to make money, just stop Fermi from making money by finding the perfect time to sell a lot of pyrite at once to crash the price. Someone makes a purchase of pyrite, and Kraft looks at him before seeing Fermi and Hollow together. Fermi makes his way over to say hello and gives him 23 Rumor gold coins, matching the value of 520 silver in exchange for the pyrite contract. Meanwhile, in the background, Hollow is touching her hand to the feathers in her hood, which are grand and white, unlike the feathers Kraft gave her. The market bells toll, which everyone claps for, and indicates the start of Kraft's and Fermi's duel. Oh, this is a juicy apple that I got here. Oh, wow. That was a good apple. The juiciness is strong. Much like how we're going strong into episode 19, where we're getting the full muddy war. Muddy battle. Ching! Irulan asks Mark if Kraft will be alright. Mark says it'll be tough because Kraft needs a huge amount of pyrite, and his only hope is Diana sending someone. If Kraft sells an average amount of pyrite, buyers will just buy up the pyrite, which will send the price up higher. Irulan brings up the possibility of being pushed into selling if Fermi acts like he's selling, which earns a compliment from Mark. At the market, Kraft sees Hollow separate from Fermi, again touching the white feathers in her hood. It's almost like she's trying to send a message. Another person buys, sending the pyrite price higher, and Kraft is left wondering how high it will go. Mark learns that the pyrite price will probably be up 20% by noon. The person mentioning it disappointed he didn't buy in earlier. It's like, oh no. Since Fermi has 800 silver worth of pyrite, he only needs a 25% increase in the market to reach the target with ease. Although, Fermi could also sell at the 20% increase and sell his remaining assets for the last 40 20 silver. Fermi also has to do it before the poison effect from the sale on credit kicks in. Kraft is left waiting nervously for Diana's representative, while keeping an eye on Fermi, when another person buys pyrite. He's left wondering if Diana made a contract with Fermi. Irulan brings up the fact that Kraft will make a lot of money if Fermi wins, which is not wrong, but Kraft will lose something big if that happens. With everything going on, Kraft thinks about the last 12 hours and what to do as more people buy Pyrite. Kraft sees Fermi looking for Hollow when someone suddenly sells, but it's not Fermi. The price doesn't even drop for long as someone else buys the Pyrite, and people around Kraft debate buying more or selling. It's just the little fluctuations in basically the stock market. You gotta know when to sell, you gotta know when to hold. Irlant finds Kraft in the crowd to let him know that someone came to Mark's stall to buy wheat with 250 silver worth of Pyrite. Kraft gives Irlant the money to go pay for the stones from Mark, when another person sells, with merchants saying that the number of sellers is increasing and that they should buy now. The only person not watching for when to sell is Fermi, who's staring right at Kraft. He's just like... As Irlant runs back to Mark to buy the Pyrite, he recalls what Kraft said about how Kraft could sell the contract if the price seems to be rising, but not if it's dropping. Mark says how no one wants to hold on to a contract so dangerous, and if the price of Pyrite goes back to normal, the contract is worthless. Irlant notes that the final person with the contract will go bankrupt, and that's the poison of being sold on credit. People are seriously discussing selling before the price drops too much, while Kraft waits for Lant, and Fermi searches for Hollow. Someone buys a big amount of Pyrite, sending the price back up massively. So Kraft decides to sell the Pyrite he has now, sending the price crashing a decent bit. Just as soon as Kraft walks away, Irlant returns with more Pyrite, and now Kraft has to wait for Diana's representative to be safe, but Irlant wonders if that person will show up. With the Pyrite, Kraft races back to the stall to sell the Pyrite, but a big buyer has gone there first, skyrocketing the price to higher than ever. Since the price is so high, all Kraft can do now is wait for Diana's representative when Irlant points out Hollow and Fermi talking to the stone merchant. Diana's representative finally shows up, only to say that Diana failed in the negotiations, meaning he only has the 250 Pyrite on him right now to play with. It's only in that moment of loss that Kraft notices the white feathers in Hollow's hood, but Irlant distracts him. Kraft apologizes for causing Irlant and Mark so much trouble, telling Irlant to give Mark a message that the plan failed. Instead of taking the money, Irlant yells at Kraft for giving up and says he fell in love with Hollow the moment he saw her. He was told by Mark that Kraft would beat him up for saying that to him, but Kraft believes the one that needs a beating is himself. Because he is just such an idiot. I'm getting apple juice all over my hand. And everything that those don't give up easily are wishful thinkers. In all his adventures so far, Kraft focuses back on the basics for trading. People make many hypotheses, and in doing so, they can get lost in making too many that any business is full of dangers. Kraft realizes he needs a guidepost, and his guidepost is Hollow herself, that she had a plan all along, and tells Irlant to spread the rumor while he goes to sell the Pyrite he has, knowing Hollow will do so as well, which she does. Hollow calls Kraft a fool, and Kraft jokes about her being immature like Diana, which scores him a punch in the ribs, but she does lean against him in the end. With Hollow's big sale logged on the price board, everyone starts arguing to sell first, and it leaves Fermi stunned. Luckily, Fermi didn't lose too much financially, with it being more of a psychological blow to his ego. Hollow had planned to be more harsh in breaking things off with Fermi, unable to forgive his words, not even wanting to speak them. She's still angry with Kraft, asking if he knows what he needs to apologize for, which he thinks he does. Apples are so good. Kraft thinks that the whole contract thing with Fermi was an ego trip, and that the worst thing he did was not to trust in Hollow, that she intentionally showed the white feathers as an indication of her plan. When Fermi sold some of his pyrite, Kraft thought it was a trap. Hollow was lying for him. Hollow demands an explanation for why he would think of that, and Kraft thought she was trying to get him to play his hand, along with the price rise to the pyrite that Kraft would have to buy at. Kraft realizes she was actually instigating Fermi to sell some of his pyrite because he didn't know this kind of trade market, and as a way to tell Kraft that Fermi had enough to win. Even Hollow signed the contract was a play by her, and get Kraft upset enough to act. Although he didn't act how she expected. However, Hollow was actually hoping for something else, but she tells Kraft to continue. Kraft brings up what Hollow said back in Reuvenhagen about not playing games and telling her how he truly feels, how they can solve problems faster with arguments. Remembering the Yoitsu argument last night, Kraft mentions the apology Hollow said at the end, how it wasn't a rejection, but her coming back to her senses. Hollow goes off on Kraft for being an absolute idiot and ruining her efforts, along with even thinking she sided with Fermi. Even with how recent their meeting was, Hollow believes that they have formed a bond far from shallow. It's like, trust is a key thing in business, and he failed. While she's thinking about if she's making a one-sided assumption, Kraft puts his hand on hers and says he wants to continue traveling with her. Kraft plans to keep doing business, and that's why he's stupid on everything else. Hollow asks again what she is to Kraft, and his answer is that no words can fully describe it, which she calls a salty line. Kraft jokes about whether Hollow likes well-salted jerky, which she doesn't. It's like... earning him a bite on the hand. He asks Hollow how she convinced Diana to sell her pyrite, and Hollow explains she figured out Kraft's plan from what Fermi told her. She was impressed Kraft thought of something like that, but Hollow was actually fizzing Diana for a different reason by tracking the scent on the letter, even through the strong sulfur scent. That would have stunk for her. Hollow wanted Diana to invent a story about Yoitsu still existing somewhere and tell Kraft about it, but Diana refused. Kraft happened to show up while Hollow was there, and Diana came up with the plan to test the depth of Kraft's resolve, which is why Diana said good luck. It wasn't really to... It was both to him and Hollow in the rafters. It also means Hollow heard Graph's question about pagan gods and humans being in relationships, and she's willing to give it a try before saying she's joking. It's like, you can't make that type of joke. Out of nowhere, Hollow brings up Diana is not human. That she was originally a bird bigger than Kraft. One day, Diana fell in love with a travelling monk and even created a church with him, but over time the monk grew suspicious because she never aged. Hollow still wants to return to Yoitsu, even if it no longer exists, and Kraft agrees with her. Meanwhile, the festival ends with the straw structures being burnt down while musicians play, and Hollow comments on how humans do flashy things. Hollow says they should go down and join the crowd, and she wouldn't mind burning passionately like the straw structure. And Kraft says that could happen if alcohol is involved. Yeah, just light them up. These are chunky apple. Oh my gosh. I am so sorry. We have one last episode. We've resolved the entire simp arc. The simp and pyrite arc. And we're gonna leave Kumerson now. In episode 20. Hollow seems to be having a bad dream, pulling a shared blanket towards herself, and rather unluckily, Kraft does the same. When Kraft does the same, he doesn't know her tail is between her knees, accidentally pulling her. It's like, she screams in pain when it's pulled, waking Kraft, who didn't accidentally stands on her tail. How has this happened yet? Oh no! Kraft apologizes for hurting Hollow, who is upset about her tail hair being pulled out and flattened. Ow! When Kraft falls asleep on her while she's talking, Hollow puts her hand over his mouth and knows to wake him up. Kraft mentions they're nearing the town they're currently travelling to, which makes Hollow jolt upright, curious to learn more about Yoitsu. There's an abbot they're looking for, and the only person to know the location of the abbey is a church priest in Terrario. Terrario? It's like almost similar to Oreo. But a T-E at the sign instead of an O. Before they find the priest in Terrario, they have to stop in Emberch to get directions to Terrario. Oh my gosh. Which even Hollow sees as such a roundabout path. Hollow wants to eat some sweetbread, but Kraft needs to sell the flour they bought from Mark and Kumerson first. This is Kraft's first time visiting Emberch, so he doesn't know what products were in demand for the town. He also expected such a big town to have more nobles or a large church that would buy flour. Hollow is just annoyed at having to eat black and bitter rye bread every day when they're carrying flour. It's like, yeah, you're carrying flour. Calling Kraft stingy despite winning a large amount of money from Fermi. She returns the conversation to the tail incident, wanted to kick Kraft's butt to make things fair. It's like, That does sound fair. Just donate for the balls. You can kick him in the butt, donate for the balls, though. That's just a brutal. That's a brutal takedown. Actually, no. That would be more fair than just a kick in the butt. Just a straight up swift. Boom! Right in between the legs. It's like, ah! Reaching the trading business building, Kraft learns that Emberch had a plentiful bounty of rye this year, meaning they have no way to deal with the flour Kraft brought with him, and Kraft wished he brought bread instead. Interestingly, Emberch seems to be the town for bakeries, so much so that if anyone outside of a bakery makes bread, they'll attack with stone rolling pins. Oh my gosh! The businessman asks if Kraft wants to set up a sales channel, but he's not interested since he's training while traveling. Asking Kraft's destination, the businessman is surprised to hear he's going to Lenos, but Kraft mentions he wants to visit Terrio first, having business with the church there. The businessman mentions how Emberch's church is massive and manages the entire surrounding area, as well as the church having an extraordinary priest named Father Mendez. Oh my gosh, my stomach is just like gurgling from these apples a bit. Graf asks how to get to Terrario, and there's a direct road to a day's travel away by car. Worked out perfectly well. Ho is eager to get going, saying they can rest in Terrio tomorrow, but she does want to eat something warm before they go. On the way to Terrio, they make camp for the night, but nothing really eventful happens, apart from Kraft spotting a pale tree without its leaves on the side of a mountain. Hollow's ears catch the sound of a water wheel turning, and as they approach the water mill, a young man steps out to stop the cart. The young man is a miller, and is interested in where Kraft and Hollow came from, but Kraft doesn't answer, asking how long until they reach Terrio. The miller says that Terrio is actually a small village, but Kraft insists on how much further the village is, wanted to just go talk to the priest. Kraft asks if the miller has any business he wants to do, so the miller focuses on Hollow, calling her a beauty. It's always Hollow, always Hollow. She always has to be a beauty. Kraft says that Hollow is a nun on a pilgrimage, which worries the miller a bit since it's not a good idea to bring a nun into Terrio. He brings up how it shouldn't be a problem for a nun to visit a church, which is where he's going. The miller brings up that the church in Terrio seems to be having a fight with the people from the Emberch church. Are they being birches? I think they're being birches. He asks what business Kraft has with the church, and Kraft answers he's going there for directions, leaving the miller disappointed Kraft's not around for business and lets them go. Kraft finally relents, and the miller, whose name is Goam Evan, his name, and as they leave, Hollow taunts Evan by waving goodbye. I do call him by Evan going forward, because it's a lot easier than trying to pronounce Gollum. Like Guillaume all the time. As soon as they're out of eyesight range, Hollow's annoyed that Evan's attention was more on Kraft than her. Kraft chalks it up to Evan not having an easy life by being a miller, which is a necessary job, but towns and villages don't like them, similar to shepherds. Kraft asks about the wheat in Hollow's pouch and how much flour could be produced from it after hulling and grinding it, but she doesn't know, so Kraft demonstrates how little it would be. With how little is produced, the people in villages and towns believe that millers always steal some of the flour. On top of that, watermills are usually owned by the landlord, so the miller collects the taxes from those that grind their wheat there, making a double-edged act of hatred against millers. With how Evan was acting, he seems desperate to leave Terrio for good, and Hollow compares a miller's work to her own story. Everyone in Terrio is looking at Kraft and Hollow with suspicion as they approach the center of town, where there's a massive stone, most likely used for meetings, festivals, or dancing. Kraft tries to be polite to the villagers, only to get silence in return, so they go straight to the church. Knocking on the front door, a young lady answers the door, and Kraft introduces himself and Hollow to her, explaining that he's a traveling merchant and Hollow is traveling with her. The young lady's name is Elsa Stingheim, and she happens to be the priest they're looking for, but she's not an official priest yet. Kraft tries his hand at asking for directions to the Andran Abbey. I had to mention the abbot's name, Louis Lana Stinkhilt. Elsa has a reaction of shock and says she doesn't know, quickly trying to close the door, but Kraft stops it with his foot, which would hurt. Kraft then mentions Father Franz, and Elsa yells that he died last summer, and that she doesn't know about the Abbey and is very busy. Thanks to Hollow, Kraft knows that Elsa isn't lying about the death of Father Franz, but is lying about not knowing the Abbey. Interesting. With nothing to do, Kraft and Hollow get a room at the town inn, and Kraft allows Hollow to sleep, but not before she takes off her robe and folds Kraft's coat and is sleeping under the sheets, threatening to drop the quality of dinner. Hollow believes he wouldn't do that to her and asks where Kraft is going, to which he answers he's going to greet the head of Terrio, hopefully to get some details about the location of the Andran Abbey. Heading to another building with a bag, Kraft knocks on the door and a lady, Miss Kemp, answers. As soon as Kraft mentions he's a traveling merchant, she calls for the village elder, Sem, calling Kraft the Rumored Man. He tells Miss Kemp off for being rude in front of Kraft before introducing himself to Kraft. Allowing Kraft inside, he sees Miss Kemp with some other ladies who are making flour they harvest into bread, which he's startled by a taxidermied snake on the table in the next room. It's like, why would you taxidermy a snake of all animals? Like, I know it's possible, but rather weird choice. in my opinion. Sam gets straight to business. Only be surprised that Kraft isn't there for business, giving Sam a bag of wheat flour for free. Kraft brings up that he's looking for an abbey, that asking the church failed to yield information. Unfortunately, Sam doesn't know about an abbey in Ontario and confirms that Father Franz passed away last summer. Sam praises Father Franz as a good man of the town, and Kraft asks if Elsa took over the church from Father Franz, which she did. The conversation is cut short by someone pounding on Sam's front door, which indicates to Sam that something has happened. The person in question gets in and charges over to Sam with an important message, and Kraft lets himself out. Kraft returns to the inn and manages to sleep, even with Hollow snoring loud enough to drown out any nearby bugs. So I guess that point got proven about her snoring. The next time he wakes up, Hollow's already awake and is annoyed that there's no dinner yet, asking if she did good not waking him up when his stomach grumbled. Hollow wants to go eat, even if Kraft just woke up, when Kraft spots Evan running through town to the church and hugging Elsa. Hollow is clearly curious about the relationship between Evan and Elsa, but Kraft closes the window on that information avenue, literally surprised that she's even interested in such gossip, calling it unpraiseworthy behaviour. However, Holly considers it studying to understand how she and Kraft would look to others, which makes Kraft react and spill his water from his mug. Holly says they don't pale in comparison to Elsa and Evan, but Kraft is ignoring her, so she gets in his face to say she's hungry. Kraft fears that it's a good idea to get food and gather information, but decides they need to change their approach to get the information, believing that both Elsa and Sam know about the Abbey, so he needs to figure out why they're hiding it. And that brings me to the end of episode 20, where just at the start of the Terrio arc, basically. And I am going to end this episode here for now. For YouTube, links will be in the description to both the channels and the Twitch for you guys to go check out. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you know when next video comes out. A ding. And Psycrafter out.